So I made a video a couple of days ago about the 3D printed adjustable offset wheel, and it's been updated since. So I thought I'd give you a better uh, view of it and a better explanation as to how it works. So let's get into it. So basically, it's almost the same as the previous wheel with slight adjustments. Namely, the rings are 2 millimeters thick as opposed to 1, which makes them a little stronger and they keep their shape better. Now, another difference is the outer parts of the rim. The one that goes outside, or the outer rim area, has a slight lip on the side here that the ring retainer goes onto. Now, the ring retainer used to be 3 millimeters thick. It's mostly 1 millimeter thick here and 2 millimeters at the other end. Well, the 2 millimeter end goes here. So the first thing you would do is glue these two together. Now, ideally, you'll be using some super thin glue. The reason for this is it's when you apply it, it really flows and goes everywhere. Try not to get your fingers glued to the item as well. Now my glue bottle's a bit screwy, but it still works. Now what you'll do is you put the glue in. See, it's already sort of stuck, but you want to try and spread it all around and hold it in place so it sets. So once that's set and dry, you want to make sure it's perfectly dry and there's no remaining glue left before you start putting the inner rings in, because you won't be able to take them out. So you're going to need to know the offset of your wheel that you're trying to match. So what you're going to try and do is you take a ruler, you put it flush, and you put the screwdriver at the inside part of the hex socket in your wheel. Now you're going to take your thumb nail and hold it so the actual position is about, we'll say 13 millimeters. Let's try that again and see. Always double check your measurements. Yeah, so we have 13 millimeters. We'll say minus the thickness of the ruler. So we'll say it's 12. You could always play with it afterwards. So one of the first things you're going to do once you've got that measurement is screw the insert to the hex plate. Now before you go ahead and screw it in, you can take your basically M2 by 10 or by 8. It's going to depend on the insert. These will be fine with the M10, but I would generally suggest M8 or not M8. I would generally suggest M2 by 8 or by 6. Again, depending on the insert that you're going to use. Some of them are thicker or thinner than others, but they're self-tapping flathead screws. So what you're going to do is you're going to pre-screw them in. Because what that's going to do, obviously it's going to make your life a little easier when you start putting it together. But that creates a bit of a lip. And you can see it right here. And you're going to want to take that off to get your wheel to sit, or your insert to sit properly. So you do all of those. You don't have to screw it in all the way, you just have to start it so that it creates the lip. Then you take your knife and you're just going to trim off that lip. And there we go. Now you can put the screw through the hex ring like so, and screw the hex ring and the insert together. Now when you're putting it together, you want to make sure that they sit really snug in here. Now obviously this is plastic, so you don't want to over tighten. So now, depending on the offset that you want, see that's really close to the outside of the wheel. Now we wanted 12, so throw in some rings. Now you're always going to want to leave 1 millimeter spacing here so that the back or the outer rim has somewhere to go. Now push all that in. So we've put in all the spacers. Let's see what that gives us here. Compare it. So we're at 11 millimeters. So that means this goes back, this comes out, because one of these rings is equal to 1 millimeters. Okay, so we want to move it in by 1 millimeter. So we take one of the rings out, put it in the back, throw this back in here. So as you can see, that moved everything over by 1 millimeter. So that would be our offset, which would be equal to this wheel here. If we look at it, it looks about right. So once that's all set, what you need to do, I can't really do it with this glue bottle, but they sell little extensions for these little bottles that basically give you a long hose, if you will, and you could deposit little bits of glue. You need to get some glue inside all of these rings. Before you do that, what you want to do, so obviously once you have your offset, because once you glue it together, it ain't coming apart. So once you have the proper offset that you want, you will glue the same thing you did with the first part. Is you will add a bit of glue here, okay, and once that is set, you basically hold it and let it set. Shouldn't take too long with the really thin glue. You're going to want to put some glue inside here. And actually, I might modify the drawing so that there's some tiny holes here where you can add the glue from the outside so you don't mess up. Alright, so I redesigned the ring retainer so it's got the holes to put the glue through. Should print nicely without supports. Now, while I was doing that, I figured out that using the rings is a good way to figure out your offset. But it doesn't look so good inside once it's done. When I set up the offset on these wheels for my setup, which was these wheels here, it came out to the fact that there was 8 rings on the negative side and 3 on the positive side. So 8 rings, this comes out to 8 millimeters, right? So I took one of the rings in the slicer, I adjusted it to 8 millimeters, so it's basically the same size as this, and I did the same thing for the other side. This side is less important because it's not really visible, but it also gives you a better construction, if you will. So now this is going to give you a much better look on the inside because you don't see all the lines in here. So put the 3 millimeter one here, which was the other side. So now we got a much better finish. And we can easily apply glue in here. So basically, with that in mind, if let's say your offset requires that you have 3 rings or 3 or 4 rings that go in here, once you figure out your offset, then you could reprint a new ring that's 4 millimeters thick, and so on and so forth. So for me it was 8 millimeters, so 8 rings, which came out to 8 millimeters, and a 3 millimeter ring, because technically in the whole kit there are 11 rings. So 8 plus 3, which is this piece here, right? Plus the 1 millimeter ring that's part of the hex ring. So 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, so it's 12 millimeters total. And you put it together and it gives you a much nicer finish. Now if you wanted to get fancy, you could change the color of the center ring and give it a whole different look. So generally speaking, once you've got the adjustment that you want, count the number of rings, make spacers of that particular thickness, and then you can assemble the wheel, glue it all together, and call it a day. But generally speaking, that's pretty much how it's going to be. And once it's all glued together, you can put your tires on with your foam and that. So the wheel is going to sell as you see it here. Basically, this whole setup, less the screws, of course, because you can't 3D print the screws. But this insert with this wheel setup, but the wheel setup you can use with other inserts, like this one, which is a Krager-like wheel. And you got this one, which is a Mugen kind of wheel. And you got the BBS kind here. All of these inserts, these extra inserts, will be available separately. Now, you might think, yes, okay, but you're going to spend more money. But if I include everything in one file, then you're going to spend a lot of money for wheels that you don't want. So, this is going to be the set that everything comes with. And any other inserts will be sold separately. Once everything is glued together, this wheel will probably be mostly unbreakable. And you can see the wheel here installed on my Tamiya original wheel and the adjustable offset wheel.